In that old video I made talking about Playhouse Disney lost media, one of the most popular topics featured there was the Little Einsteins pilot, and to this day, it remains a desired piece of lost media. At the time, however, the search for what was considered the Little Einsteins pilot was very different from what has been unearthed recently, and it drastically changes what we're actually looking for. In the original video, I mentioned that a 40-second pilot was made in 2004 and pitched to Disney in hopes that the concept would get picked up into a full show. It worked, and that pilot was released as a trailer onto many VHS and DVDs to get people interested in the series. This in its entirety was believed to be the entire pilot, and attention then turned to a rumored second pilot that was made, which seemed more interesting to fans for its lack of information and mystery. However, this second pilot is not where the search effort should be, but rather back to that 40-second pilot, because it's been discovered that this is not all that it appears to be. While it might seem obvious now, this alleged pilot that was put onto home media released as a trailer is just that, a trailer. It's a compilation of different clips and scenes cut together that don't create a cohesive story. It's far from an actual pilot and was not pitched to Disney in this way, but rather, these clips come from a larger, fully animated pilot that was used as the original pitch, and that's what's currently lost. 180 Sideline reached out to me with more information about this topic, after having done research on it, and told me about a series of crew members they contacted asking about it, and was given a series of screenshots that completely proved the trailer was made from a full piece of animation. There are scenes in it that are not present in the trailer, and it was even pointed out that the characters in the swinging scene change places along with the earliest logo of the series appearing that we've seen so far. Unfortunately, the sources that 180 Sideline asked only had those images, and not the full pilot, while some of them didn't have anything at all. They also looked back through old interviews with crew members, but so far has come up empty-handed. Even though the search for this one has been slow, I'm glad we were able to get some new content from it, and even became aware that this was still lost in the first place. As for the second pilot, I don't think there's been any progress made on it, and its general mystery leaves much more in the way of research that needs to be done. The only evidence we even have that it exists is a trailer that uses a bunch of different scenes, similar to the first pilot, so it's possible that this exists in a similar way, and Disney has a full copy of the whole thing. Though there is also a credit from the website of a writer who mentions having written a pilot for Baby Einstein products that is going into production soon, though it's not clear which pilot this is referencing, so it could be either one. But then, there's also a piece of artwork and early logo design on the same website, which feels like it would fit somewhere in the timeline of the second pilot, but the designs don't match up completely, so this is another mystery. 180 Sideline is not sure what this could go to. It definitely doesn't look like a screenshot or something that was animated, which means it's either something that was never animated, or it does relate to the second pilot in some way. I'll keep in touch with Sideline and see if they can unearth anything new, or contact the writer and ask for clarification about their credit. Even when you think a search has concluded, it just takes one new lead to change what you thought about it. It goes without saying that the majority of cartoons or any entertainment media start with a pilot, an original outline or vision of what the final series will become, and these topics in themselves have always been popular. Searches for the Kappa Mikey pilot that was pitched to MTV before Nickelodeon, and the Jimmy Two Shoes pilot, which featured more intense concepts than the final show, are really well known and have plenty of visuals to see, as well as information from the crew proving they were made and exist. But what about a pilot to another popular cartoon that doesn't have any visuals directly from it, and is only rumored to exist based on evidence? This is about Paw Patrol, a series that probably needs no introduction because of how popular it's become over the past few years. I had heard about Paw Patrol several years ago, but now it feels like it's everywhere, and it's probably because of this new popularity that fans have started looking for the original pilot of the show. However, if you search the internet for that kind of content, you won't find much that directly talks about it. For those unaware, Paw Patrol wasn't always the iconic show it's become, and instead it started out much differently. The original idea behind Paw Patrol dates back to 2010, after Spin Master created a prototype of a transforming truck toy. It was decided that they wanted to make a television show based around the concept of a transforming truck, and took proposals from industry professionals to come up with a direction for the project. While the majority of these pitches are lost in themselves, the chosen proposal was made by Keith Chapman, who also created Bob the Builder. One of the first sketches for Paw Patrol can be seen online, and was titled Raffi and the Rescue Pups at this point in production, but shortly after, revisions started. The details of the dogs were constantly changed, like names, sizes, and breeds, as well as Raffi having several name changes too, before Ryder was agreed on. The art style of the show went through several revisions as well, having been more realistic looking at one point, which can be seen in a second piece of concept art, until they were then changed to their more cartoony style. Eventually in 2013, Nickelodeon licensed Paw Patrol in a partnership with Spin Master, and the series started airing in August of that year, which is what we know today. But when it comes to a potential pilot, it's not clear at all if or when a pilot would have been made, or if one was even made at all. None of the interviews or details about Paw Patrol mention an actual pilot, only that Spin Master convinced Nickelodeon to pick up the show in 2012, following one of the revisions. It's possible that at this time, some kind of test could have been made to show Nickelodeon, but it's equally as possible something was created earlier on that was never mentioned. Jungle Junction from Playhouse Disney, for example, had 3 test pilots made for it over the duration of its creation period, all of which were hardly known about and still don't have any content from them having resurfaced. The Lost Media Wiki article also has a variety of additional concept art from the different stages of development, which use a handful of designs from other points in time, but how far each one got beyond this concept art is still not clear. But the 3 years that Paw Patrol spent in development is still a large mystery. I'm glad we do have those pieces of concept art though. Without them, there would be nothing that tells the history of the series from its earlier time in development, but whether or not a pilot exists at all is still up for debate. This next topic is one that I've talked about before, but due to a huge influx of requests to cover it again, I decided it would be good to place in this video. And we do have some new information about it that we didn't have the last time I talked about it, so now we're even closer to getting it found. Maybe this is the final push it needs to finally be unearthed. If you've been watching my videos for the past couple years, you'll probably know about a pretty popular topic that was first brought up by Seeker of the Lost, who made a video about it back in 2021. The topic is already 3 years old, and is commonly referred to as the Oswald-Ozzy Osbourne crossover commercial, though its official name is believed to be the Oswalds. Back in 2021, evidence was found to suggest that in the early 2000s, Nickelodeon aired a commercial that took clips from their Nick Jr. show Oswald and replaced the audio with quotes from the Osbournes reality show that was airing on MTV, which created a memorable commercial that is currently not resurfaced to any extent. In fact, the original claims of its existence were sorta mixed in terms of their information. There was a lot of doubt that this was real at all, and was maybe a false memory. However, over the years, we've gotten confirmation from the creator of Oswald that he did recall the commercial existing, and there was also a post from a Google group thread in 2002 that mentioned it just aired on TV. This is where the bulk of the search comes in, because while we knew it existed and knew it was from the early 2000s, we didn't have a time frame to search in until somewhat recently. That Google Groups thread in particular dated it to early July 2002, and the hands-on effort began in attempts to find a recording of it. However, this proved to be very difficult, as recordings from July 2002 on Nickelodeon are very rare, and even if the commercial was aired earlier than that, maybe in June, that month doesn't have a lot of content online from it either. We still don't know for how long or how often the commercial aired, but June to July 2002 is our general time frame, with a confirmed sighting in early July. But we can get even more specific if we look at the latest discovery in the Lost Media Wiki forums thread, from a post by Winter Katzen. In it, they deduce through a variety of primary sources and evidence that the commercial must have been aired on July 7th between the program from 6 to 6:30 p.m. But it gets even better with the last piece of information that is mentioned. Winter Katzen also said that on July 7th, 2002, Nickelodeon aired a special music program called In Concert on Teen Nick, with Usher as the performer. This lines up perfectly with what the Oswald creator had said previously about the commercial, that it was aired during a special event on the channel, but he couldn't remember which one. Earlier on, we assumed the event he was referring to was the Kids' Choice Awards, as it seemed like the kind of commercial that would have fit right in with the wackiness of the event. But this concert fits the time frame, and what's more is that the concert itself is lost media, so there's a fairly high chance if someone can unearth a recording of the concert, the commercial will be placed within. I've been trying to ask around and see if anyone has any recordings from early July 2002, but so far, no one has come up with anything new. Some of the earlier recollections also state people remember seeing the commercial air in the afternoon or at other points in the day, so even if you don't have a copy of this concert or July 7th specifically, there's a good chance it could show up on a different day. In fact, the Google Groups thread was not even from July 7th exactly, it was from the 10th. So we know for certain it did play after the concert at least once. Though we don't know how many times, or if at all, it played before the concert premiered. Maybe it debuted with the concert and then was played for a few days after. It's hard to get a complete understanding of its air cycle without more confirmed dates. But for now, July 7th to 10th, 2002 is where we gotta look, and hopefully can end the search with one lucky copy. I can't think of a better way to begin this video than by talking about one of the oldest Nick Jr. shows that still has its pilot lost, despite how popular of a series it's become. Perhaps that's because many people weren't even aware that this show had a lost pilot to begin with, or that it looks so different compared to the final show. Dora the Explorer probably doesn't need any introduction, and is one of Nickelodeon's most popular kids shows, that recently was put into the lost media spotlight for the crossover commercial it had with George Lopez. This was about George getting lost on his way to Nick at Night, and ending up in Dora's show, creating comedic dialogue between the two. This topic was found a few months ago on a homemade DVD, but there's a bigger piece of Lost Dora content which hasn't resurfaced, and that's its original pilot, or possibly two original pilots I should say. The first of these two was claimed to be found years ago, when there was big news that it had resurfaced. It was a short-minute clip of Dora and friends going to the beach and swimming in the water. However, this is far from the full pilot, and the rest of it has remained missing. According to the Dora Wiki, it says that half of the full 15-minute pilot was released onto Funline Animation's website. This would mean around 7 minutes were posted. However, visiting the website now only reveals that 1-minute clip that was shared years ago. It's not completely confirmed if or when these 7 minutes were actually posted by Funline. However, an interview with series creator Chris Gifford does confirm that a full 15-minute pilot exists, so that much is true. The Lost Media Wiki also has screenshots from the pilot that use the same visual style but contain different scenes not present in the minute clip. This proves that there is more out there from the pilot that we haven't seen yet. Now for the second pilot that I mentioned, this is up for some debate, and it's not currently known how much animation was produced for it. There's another clip that can be seen on Funline Animation's website, and is titled The First Animation Test, showing Dora and Boots walking through different locations. While the background has visuals that look similar to the first pilot, as well as using Boots' early design, Dora and the animation itself looks much closer to that of the final show. It's not known how much of this test exists, or if this is the entire piece, but since only clips have been posted to this website, I wouldn't be surprised if a longer version exists, but that's not confirmed. Either way, both are only partially found, and when it comes to contacting someone that would have it, I have no idea where the search stands. Like I mentioned before, I've seen some interest in starting a search for the topic, especially after new pilot artwork was discovered on the website, but it never really got anywhere after that. I'm not even sure if anyone has been contacted who worked on it, but the website does say the pilot is for internal use only, so this lead in itself is probably a dead end. At this point in time, it's possible a veteran animator or crew member could have a copy and be eager to share their work, but more research in the community will need to be conducted before that conclusion is made. I'd personally love to see this one be found, especially for it being classic Nick Jr. and the animation style being so different from what we ended up getting. On the topic of pilots that look different from what we ended up getting, here's another one that has yet to be found in full, despite how often it gets discussed, and is sort of the last of what I called the Nick Jr. trifecta. For a really long time, and probably even to this day, there were always a series of Nick Jr. pilots that would be brought up together, to the point where I often grouped them together. These were the Super Y pilot, the Bubble Guppies pilot, and the Team Umizoomi pilot. For some reason, everyone liked talking about all three. However, both the Super Y pilot and Bubble Guppies pilot have both been found, which leaves Team Umizoomi the last of these three to resurface. Similar to the previous two, the Team Umizoomi pilot featured many major differences from the final show, and even had a history from before its time on Nick Jr. Back in 2006, the original concept for the show was created, with the show having been titled The Umizoomies and featured 2 additional characters that were not included in the final show. The Lost Media Wiki mentions their names are Zigzag and Alphonse, and can be seen alongside the other 3 characters in some concept art, who would later go on to be in the final show. Apparently, it took a while for the show to get off the ground, 2 years in fact, until a pilot was finally made in 2008 and pitched that same year. But rather than being pitched to Nick Jr., it was first pitched to Noggin, and was supposed to air in 2008 on the channel. However, that didn't happen, and instead, the show was pitched to Nickelodeon, where it was greenlit and scheduled to air on Nick Jr.'s morning block. During this period, the show was reworked, becoming what we know it as today, with its final title and dropping the other 2 characters. As for its original iteration and pilot, there's some content from it that can be seen. The big find, though, is a short clip of the pilot that was first uploaded to YouTube in 2018 without any audio. But later in 2020, the same clip from 2018 was re-uploaded, however, this time it had audio. It's not known where this complete clip originated from, but the Lost Media Wiki article makes a guess about its source, and I agree it's a very likely possibility. It's mentioned that the clip with audio might have come from a video called Nick It Uber Hot Mix Lossless, which has sort of taken on an urban legend status at this point. Apparently, that was the title of an internal compilation video from Nick that contained content from pilots and internal use materials never supposed to be seen by the public. However, it was somehow accidentally made public for a short while, and some people ended up finding it while it was up, but hasn't been seen since. I went on a mini search for it years ago, I think when I was looking into the Bubble Guppies pilot, which is where some of the earliest screenshots of it were said to be sourced from, but I didn't find anything from the video. You can come across some old mentions of the video on various wikis, and even links to it, but none of them work, and nobody that I've talked to has the video or has seen it since. I'm not convinced that nobody out there has it. It seems like the kind of thing that enough people knew about at the time for someone to have saved. But then again, it's not really known how much content from each show was actually contained in it. I'm sure it wasn't the majority of these pilots and only clips, but that would still be nice to confirm. I'm not sure if the Umizoomies is something that any of the crew members would have, or something similar to the Bubble Guppies pilot that could only be leaked from an anonymous source who has access to it. Going back to existence unconfirmed pilots, we have another one from a show that aired on Nickelodeon, though it's much less popular than Paw Patrol. I wouldn't really say that in a bad way though, it's very nostalgic, and I'm sure some of you watching this will get reminded that the show exists and bring back some memories. It's the Rubbadubbers, a show that I remember watching on the channel growing up, and was very memorable for its stop-motion style. Before airing on Nickelodeon, however, it originally aired on CBeebies in the UK from 2002 to 2005, and even before that, the early development of the series had a few differences compared to the final show that we've all watched. Originally, the show was titled Plug, after the main frog character in the show, prior to his name being changed to Tub in the final version. This early name can be seen in the series logo, which was filed for trademark in the UK in April 2001, with the show beginning production in 2002. But it was in these earlier years where the mystery begins, in trying to find evidence for the existence of the lost pilots to the Rubbadubbers. The search starts on the Lost Media Wiki article, but the information presented here and where it leads is a little confusing. This article says that in the early 2000s, the first pilot of the Rubber Dubbers was made, while still under the Plug name, and that a second pilot titled Splish Splash Sploosh was also created after. The source of these is apparently a Wikipedia article and another article from a website called C21 Media. However, if you visit the Wikipedia page first, you'll notice that there's no additional source proving either of these pilots exist, with the only link being that previously mentioned C21 article. So this is all we have to work with. Now, taking a look at this article doesn't reveal a whole lot of information either, other than the fact that it specifically states pilot episodes will be made available by the end of the year, though it doesn't say how many that includes, and that the Plug name was still being used by that point, rather than it having been changed to the Rubber Dubbers. However, there is no mention on what the titles of these pilots are, any visuals that accompany them, or if they were actually made at all. I still have no idea where the title of Splish Splash Sploosh even came from. It seems like, based on the sources collected between the Lost Media Wiki article and Wikipedia page, the C21 Media write-up is the only living source that even mentions the existence of pilots, but without further details, it's hard to say if they actually exist at all. And finally, there's another piece of information that can be found online from a user who mentioned they contacted a writer on the show, which could possibly tilt the scales one way or another for whether or not pilots were even made. This writer says, "I don't think there ever was a pilot. Animation is so expensive to produce that it doesn't often happen. I think Tub the Pirate was the first episode made. I have seen some bits of test animation of characters walking and the splash effects. This topic kind of reminds me a lot of Astrology with Squidward, a search that basically lived off of unsourced false Wikipedia claims that ended up not being true. I think people might have mistook the Plug logo as having come from some kind of pilot and not acting as a standalone piece of media, and Splish Splash Sploosh could have been made up for the fact that this article mentioned that more than one pilot was supposed to be made. Unfortunately, I don't see any proof of them existing, and combine that with the quote from the writer, it seems even less likely. You could make a point that we don't even know if this quote is real, it could have been made up since there's no name or screenshot attached to it, but until a good piece of evidence comes forward that can be sourced proving these pilots were made, I'm going to say they probably don't exist. When you're looking for a good piece of lost media that you can lose yourself in the search for, this first one of the video hits all the points you want. Not to mention, it's related to Nickelodeon, which in my opinion is one of the best categories for lost media. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you might remember the Oswald-Ozzy Osbourne crossover that seemed to exist for no reason. This was some kind of commercial or advertisement that used Oswald clips with audio from the Osbournes TV show dubbed over the characters. The only record we had of its existence was several Reddit threads that all recalled seeing it on TV, until eventually, the creator of Oswald confirmed it was real and was played at a Nickelodeon event. Unfortunately, this one is still a mystery, as no visuals have resurfaced and we're unsure at which event it was played at. But this is not the only strange Nick crossover that exists, because another thread from August 2022 showed up, and has yet to be found to any extent. Papa Locomotion made a thread where he recollects a promo from the late 2000s, and has been trying to reunite with it ever since. The post goes on to describe the promo. It begins with Dora and Boots, possibly singing and dancing as they are known to do. Then, out of seemingly nowhere, George Lopez interrupts them to ask where he is. Dora answers with, "You're on Nick Jr., to which George responds, "Nick Jr., I'm supposed to be on Nick at Night." Afterwards, the duo helps Lopez find his way and reveals that the whole thing was just a promo for his self-titled ABC sitcom that Nick at Night was airing in reruns at the time. Yes, there exists a crossover between Dora the Explorer and George Lopez that is completely lost, and probably hasn't been seen since the late 2000s. Though apparently, the internet has been aware of this crossover for quite a while, as a lot of Reddit posts were made earlier in 2022 that mention its existence, with the earliest being from 2018, though the promo is falsely remembered as an actual episode. This thread is where I first found the topic, and there was some good discussion about where it aired, like on Nickelodeon or Nick at Night. with some debate about whether or not it made an appearance on Nick Jr. at all. Papa Locomotion also mentioned having looked through commercial break compilations from the time period on YouTube and the Internet Archive, but didn't find anything related to this crossover. I also remember reading some comments about it in the original crossover video from Seeker of the Lost, and it's been mentioned on Twitter as well. This one seems to be remembered by way more people than the Oswald one, so it's a little surprising that no one has come across it yet. Mock-up screenshots were also attached to the post, and based on the recollection, it seems like George Lopez gets placed into Dora's world, rather than Dora showing up on George's show. One of the most difficult aspects of searching for lost commercials and promos is that their unearthing is limited to recordings that have been saved over the years. But considering how many people remember this one, and the fact that it seemed to air regularly on TV, it shouldn't be too hard to find, compared to the Oswald one, which was probably only aired once or twice and never shown again. Spreading awareness of this topic is probably one of, if not the only way, it's going to get found. And then it was found. It's time for the conclusion of a search for a lost commercial. Similar to bumpers and promos, commercials have always been an area that I was never too interested in, until I started coming across the right ones that did get me interested. Unfortunately, no, this segment is not talking about the Oswald-Ozzy Osbourne crossover promo, which is still lost, though we believe to have narrowed down its airtime to June or July 2002. So if you have any Nickelodeon VHS tapes from that time, be sure to look through them. There's actually not a lot of recordings from then currently available online, so I'm pretty confident we'll find it around there. But anyway, this topic is the other big crossover commercial that got quite a bit of attention, the Dora the Explorer George Lopez crossover. This one was first brought up on the Lost Media Wiki forums in August 2022, but had been remembered and discussed online for years before that. It was never really forgotten like the Oswald one was. The commercial is supposed to be announcing that the George Lopez show is coming to Nick at Night, but instead of a traditional ad as you'd expect, they have George get lost and accidentally end up on Nick Jr., where he meets Dora and they interact. With the exception of the recollections from other users that all matched up, there were no visuals that existed for it, aside from a mock-up, and it's likely that no one had seen it since back when it aired on TV. After I covered the topic in a video from early March 2023, there was some new interest in it, and new ideas about where to look for a copy, with demo reels of people that worked on other promos or contacted Nickelodeon editors being a couple popular choices. Someone even mentioned asking George Lopez himself. I did come across an old Instagram post from earlier on where the commercial was mentioned in the comments to him, and he remembered it. But I'm sure if he had a copy, he would have shared it at the time. The biggest question remained if the commercial had aired on Nick Jr., Nickelodeon, Nick at Night, or all three. I had always believed it aired on Nick at Night because kids wouldn't understand who George Lopez is, or what it was advertising. But then it was pointed out that it would make sense to air elsewhere, and not on the same block that it's supposed to be advertising. What this search was and always had been was a hands-on effort to look through commercial compilations and VHS tapes, hoping that a copy would be found. So the next question became, what year did this air in? The couple leads we had to go off of was an article that mentioned George Lopez coming to Nick at Night, dated August 2007, and a user that mentioned seeing the commercial in fall 2007. So that was the starting date to look through compilations, but in all the ones we looked through, we didn't find it and came up empty-handed. We did find other George Lopez promos that were promoting his show on Nick at Night, but not this specific crossover. But despite not really having anywhere else to look, the thread never really went inactive, with the search having ended in the same month, when Fernugo in the Lost Media Wiki Discord server ended up finding a copy of the commercial on a DVD recording they had of Nick Jr. from May 2008. Like I said before, I always felt like the way this would resurface would be through a home recording, but I just didn't think it would have been so soon, and in such a simple way. From my understanding, Fernugo was watching the DVD anyway and happened to see it there, and knew it was lost. So in a way, it was kind of a happy accident. I mentioned in the thread that if so many people remembered it, then it must have been on air for quite a while. If the claim that it aired in fall 2007 is accurate, then this checks out. with its total amount of time on TV being at least 8 months. This also proved that it aired on Nick Jr., though it's not known if it did make appearances anywhere else. The commercial is really funny, and matched up almost exactly with what people remembered about it. This next topic is one that didn't get too much attention within the lost media community, for the fact that it was largely found outside of it, and also there isn't really a dedicated search or article for the topic, that being Tickle U. Now, within the area of lost media from kids shows, Tickle U is one of the less desired or searched for areas of content, probably because there's not as much nostalgic attachment to it. This was a very short-lived block of preschool shows that aired on Cartoon Network from 2005 to 2006 before being cancelled, and is not remembered well at all. The block had a variety of relatively unpopular shows, with hosts that many fans to this day still say are unsettling and creepy. In fact, the general branding of the block is kind of all over the place, and I'm not sure if it was ever even clear to kids what any of this was supposed to be. So because of how obscure it is, a lot of its content became lost, including the most famous production to come out of Tickle U, a new US dub of Peppa Pig that replaced the original UK voice actors. This dub only aired on the block, which made finding the episodes very hard, in addition to most Tickle U content in general. However, this topic is one of those continuous search efforts that slowly unearths new content, and one of the biggest finds from it happened this year. In September 2023, Evan's Nickelodeon Archive dropped a huge surprise in the Nick Story Discord server, and revealed that they had purchased a tape lot from eBay which included 3 tapes and contained hours of previously lost Tickle U content. Up until this point, there were only a handful of promos and commercials online, mostly in poor quality, and very little from the shows themselves, most notably that Peppa Pig dub I mentioned before. But now we have more content from the block than anyone ever found before, and in really good quality. It's kind of amazing that anyone even taped this much of the block to begin with, considering it wasn't popular and very short-lived. As for the Peppa Pig dub itself, a total of 8 new episodes were found on the tapes, in addition to a single episode that was found previously, to bring the total amount of content found up to 9 out of 52 episodes. The server actually had a watch party when this stuff was being archived, and I was there for a little bit too. It was so cool getting to witness lost media become found in real time, and everyone had a great time checking out the content. With more of this material being watchable, it's not as bad as the few promos suggest, if you were to watch them in passing. Yeah, the mascots aren't great, and some of the dialogue can get a little confusing, but overall, it's a cool artifact from a short-lived block that's worth saving when it can be. Like for the first time ever, a CN City era Tickle U bumper showed up that nobody even knew existed. It's little obscurities like this that make it fun to keep searching for, and there's still a lot more to find. So if you have some Tickle U recordings, we could see another collection of content resurface. I'm sure at this point, I don't have to say how popular Nickelodeon Lost Media is, and how much I enjoy talking about it. So if you haven't been keeping up with Nick content, this find might come as a surprise to you. I've always considered the Super Y pilot, Bubble Guppies pilot, and Team Umizoomi pilot to be the trifecta of Nick Jr., for how often these 3 get brought up together. It was only in the last update video when the Super Y pilot was found, and now the Bubble Guppies pilot can be added to that list. This one took everyone by surprise, and I almost didn't believe it was true when I was informed about it being posted. I think that people had actually been DMing me about it during a live stream, but I didn't believe them because the timing seemed too coincidental, so I was going to look into it later, and once I did, I was not disappointed. The entire Bubble Guppies pilot was uploaded by a user named Doria, and the link to the pilot was posted in the comments section of the Lost Media Wiki article. We don't know who Doria is or how exactly they got the pilot, but there are rumors that suggest it was intentionally unearthed and posted for the fact that Bubble Guppies was ending its run on TV in the same week. There was also some speculation that this pilot might have been part of the Nickelodeon leaks that were happening at the time, but this is not confirmed, and it's been up without any issues for months, so it seems unlikely to have been obtained in this way. The pilot itself is pretty different from the main show, mostly in its animation style and character designs. Back when this first released, I made a post about it on Twitter, and everybody was making memes about how horrifying Mr. Rooper looked, as well as the fact that every character had a weird shine texture to them that was not in the final show. Before this, we only had a few screenshots that supposedly came from a different internal Nick video called Nick It Uber Hot Mix, which was an internal video that was accidentally made public several years ago. This hasn't resurfaced at all since then, and it was privated shortly after. I never got any other leads to finding a copy myself, though it's not as relevant to this search anymore. There are apparently still pieces of content from it though that are currently lost media, including content from the Team Umizoomi pilot, which is still missing in its entirety. Actually, as a little bonus, I can tell you guys there is a minor update with the Team Umizoomi pilot since I last talked about it in a kids show lost media video. A series of new background art and an image of the Firefly character was discovered to have been posted on the website of someone that worked on the show, which nobody had come across until now. It's possible that with this discovery, this person might have had a direct hand in creating the pilot and could have a copy in their possession. I think out of all three Trifecta pilots, Team Umizoomi is the one that has always been looked into the least. So maybe with a little more digging, we could actually end up finding it before the year is over, and say that all three were found within the span of this year. We've made it to the last segment of the video, and we're going to end with another rumored pilot. This time, to a show that I don't know much about, but apparently it's gotten really popular lately. I think it was on a live stream when the viewers told me to check out the Lost Media Wiki article about it in the first place, and now it's become as wanted as any of the other kids show pilots like Team Umizoomi and the Little Einsteins that still haven't been found. This is the pilot to Word Girl, a show that ran on PBS Kids from 2007 to 2015, and before that, as a short series from 2006 to 2007. However, similar to the other pilots mentioned in this video, there too exists a supposed Word Girl pilot from the show's earlier years, but it's not clear what exactly it contains, or if it even exists. Word Girl animator Amy McDonald uploaded a few pieces of early concept art of the characters from the show to her website, taken from a promotional Bible for the show. These are dated 2005, which puts them from before Word Girl even premiered as a short series on PBS Kids. So the characters all appear with earlier designs and are accompanied by descriptions of who they are in the show. But it's not anything in these pieces that people noticed, it's the descriptions that they were given, which says, "Cover of promotional Bible used to generate interest in the show at pilot stage." This little piece of information that mentions the pilot stage has led people to believe that it means an actual pilot for the series was created and animated using these early designs and is currently lost. However, the existence of a real pilot is not clear, and there is no other material from this rumored pilot available online. There isn't even any other early content that's been posted either. Nobody knows what Amy means by pilot stage, and I'm not sure if anyone has asked her either. It seems like there's enough interest in the show now where she could answer that question for everyone, but if I had to guess, I would say there probably wasn't a pilot. It's because of the fact that Word Girl existed as a short series before the final show came out. Those shorts probably acted as the pilot in some way. I feel like I have to give a little deserved attention to a topic that I've covered before, and revisit it for the fact that there really hasn't been any interest in it since my original video. In fact, it's one of the most obscure kids shows I've ever covered, so in some way I'm not surprised that it took this long to even dig up as much information about it as has been found. Going back to Playhouse Disney is a show that I don't think anyone remembers unless you were a kid in the late 2000s. In fact, I would have no memory of it at all if my sister hadn't been small enough to be watching it, and that's Jungle Junction. This is a CGI show about animals that live as vehicles, and get into all sorts of problems around their town. What's most interesting about this topic, and similar to Yo Gabba Gabba, is that the series had 3 pilots before it was put into production. However, unlike Yo Gabba Gabba, all 3 Jungle Junction pilots are completely lost, and there's almost no information online about them. I think it was only after my original video that covered it where anyone bothered to add information to the Lost Media Wiki article about the show, and even now there's not a whole lot that's been collected on it, especially outside of this article. Unfortunately, one of the biggest issues with kids show lost media is the level of documentation that exists for it, as a lot of the people who are attempting to compile information don't have the same skills as veterans of the community might, so sometimes information is scarce or missing entirely. But it's still a starting point, which is the important part. The Lost Media Wiki article states that a total of 3 pilots were made between 2003 and 2008, with the first one originating as an idea that series creator Trevor Ricketts had for a show depicting animals on wheels called Wheelers. He showed the concept to his colleagues, and it was adapted into a 6-minute 3D pilot, with only a single voice actor. Until 2005, Ricketts pitched the pilot to different networks around Europe, but none of them were interested, until the Cartoon Forum in Denmark, which gave him encouragement to update the pilot with better production value, ultimately catching the interest of Playhouse Disney, who requested that a third full-scale pilot be produced. Unlike the previous 2, this one was shown to test audiences and gave Jungle Junction the green light to begin its main series production in 2008, creating the show we know today. However, in the years since the creation of all these pilots, none of them have been seen or mentioned that much online. There are a few articles that discuss the show's creation and original announcement, which is where this early image of Lance the Rhino is sourced from, but there is no animation or other concepts that were ever posted. What's most interesting about this topic is that by being able to see all 3 pilots together, we could get an understanding about the evolution of the show, as well as insight into the creative process that was used to go from an idea on paper to a successful show on Disney Channel. I'm not sure how easily accessible the third pilot would be to get released, since it was ordered by Disney, but that's not to say it can't be released by someone who worked on it. The Stanley pilot was uploaded last year, which was used in Disney advertising material, and there weren't any problems with that. Though I do believe the first 2 are probably something that only Rickett and the small team that made them would have copies of, and likewise, could be the only people to release it. The article mentions that people have contacted Ricketts about the pilot, but I'm guessing he either didn't respond or the lead didn't go anywhere, because it was never followed up on. Maybe with more interest in this topic, more of its content can be uncovered, even if it's only concept art or models. Yes, I'm sure a lot of you clicked on this video for this specific reason, and I gotta say, it caught me by surprise too. Just recently, I had been revisiting searches that had hit dead ends in a recent video, and came across the Super Y pilot while coming up with the topics for that one. The Super Y pilot, by all means, had definitely been a dead-end search for quite a while. Just like most topics that relate to kids shows, this one had a pretty dedicated fan base from the beginning, and over the years it had grown into its own search server. But just as quickly as the group had formed, it began to hit some huge roadblocks. Back then, there were few resources to contact in attempts to get a copy of the pilot found, with the most common being Cup of Coffee Animation, where the pilot was filmed, Angela Santomero, the creator of the original pilot, and the Annecy Film Festival, who had aired it back in the year 2000. In all of these cases, and some smaller leads too, the search server had come up empty-handed until PDog64 found a listing for the pilot in the archives of a Canadian university. Shortly after making this discovery, PDog received the content that was archived, believing it was the full pilot, when it actually was only an audio recording of it. All the visuals were missing, besides a few screenshots from various press releases. This occurred 2 years ago, and ever since then, it had been extremely difficult trying to find any crew members that worked on this original version of the show. There just weren't many that were associated with it. A few contacts were made after this, but no one had anything, and I even received a tip from a viewer who had connections to a former employee that worked at the studio when the pilot was made, but even this did not end up providing us with a copy. It very much was a dead-end search when I made that video a couple weeks ago, and I thought it was going to come down to finding an obscure employee that had a copy long since forgotten about, unaware of how desired it was to the community. However, that's not what happened at all, and in a matter of days, the search went from being a dead end to complete, as I received word a few days ago, in real time, that the pilot had been found. I wasn't sure what to make of this because it seemed too good to be true, and I was trying to follow the story that was being told in the Lost Media Wiki Discord server before getting myself all hyped for nothing. But after a few minutes it all became clear, and the story couldn't be any simpler. the old Washington resident, and Melody, both users in the server, had simply sent an email to the Annecy Film Festival, which was getting ready for its 2023 show, and asked if they had a copy of the pilot. Shortly after, they received a reply with the full pilot in great quality. I was particularly happy for this one because I had been following the search for so long, but apparently there was a lot of interest in it from outside the community as well. I made a tweet and news spread, leading to some of the happiest reactions I've ever seen when it comes to found media. Everyone seems to be in agreement that the pilot is great, a much better version of the final show, with really smooth animation and a fun atmosphere. So you might be asking yourself how any of this was possible when the Annecy Film Festival was already contacted 2 years ago. Well, that's a mystery I don't think we'll ever solve, because what this comes down to is the fact that someone thought to retrace our steps and check in a place that had already been looked in, and to our surprise, it led to a different outcome. I was not the one who contacted Annecy originally, but it was definitely one of the first places we looked, because it was known to have aired there. The theory is that the second email sent to them was simply received by someone who had more knowledge or interest in helping the search, whereas the first one did not. This isn't the first time I've seen something like this happen, but I'm glad that it did, and we finally got to see this pilot. While this next topic doesn't have a dedicated search, I haven't seen anyone talk about it, and there isn't even an archived list of content from it. I found it particularly interesting while doing research for this video, so I wanted to bring it up. Similar to Team Umizoomi and Bubble Guppies, Ni Hao Kai Lan is one of those modern-era Nick Jr. shows that has become recognizable and, unsurprisingly, has a piece of lost media connected to it. However, it's not a pilot and not what you might be thinking of at all. Before Ni Hao Kai Lan premiered as a show on Nick Jr., it originated as a short called Downward Doghouse, featuring some early character designs compared to the final show. For some reason, I was always under the impression that this was simply an early pilot to the show, but that's not quite the case, and instead it acts as more of a precursor. Downward Doghouse was a collection of shorts that aired as part of an interstitial series on Nick Jr. called Nick Jr. Presents My World, and from the Wayback Machine, we can see a section from their website dedicated to it, containing 3 Downward Doghouse shorts and 2 from a different series. The other 2 that are shown here can be found on YouTube, but currently, only one Downward Doghouse short has resurfaced in its original English version, that being Dragon Dance. Apparently, the series also got dubs in the UK, and a couple of those have resurfaced as well, Dragon Dance and Follow That Slipper. However, Where's Ho Ho has not appeared in any way, and I'm not even sure how many different shorts were made as part of the My World series. It doesn't seem like the internet really knows either, with one of the compilations on YouTube having 2 shorts in it that are not listed here on Nickelodeon's website, but I couldn't find a complete list of shorts that were part of the series. There's even some more Downward Doghouse lost media that is mentioned on the Lost Media Wiki, including an e-card maker, full website, and game that could be played. There are even some storyboards from Ni Hao Kai Lan that have a Downward Doghouse logo in the top corner, and one page of a guy twirling a weapon around for some reason. Nobody knows if this was part of some other project or a joke to the storyboard artists, but it's part of the set. This is the kind of search that would benefit from home recordings being found, and the series was airing during an era when that sort of thing would have still been relevant. So if you have any VHS tapes from this era of Nick Jr. in your collection, you might have some lost media. And then the second short was found. Moving on to the second topic is another short piece of animation, and it involves the series of precursor shorts to the Nick Jr. show Ni Hao Kai Lan. This is called Downward Doghouse, a 3-episode series that was aired as part of My World on Nick Jr. and focused on stories told from different points of view around the globe. Downward Doghouse was definitely one of the more popular shows from this collection, and was even heavily promoted on the Nick Jr. website at the time. But as for the animations themselves, they weren't archived very well at all. I came across this topic recently and talked about it in a video where 2 of the 3 shorts were still missing, until recently when the second episode showed up on a VHS tape from 2005, uploaded by Vance's Media Treasures. It was titled Follow That Slipper, which leaves the final short, Where's Ho Ho, as the last one that needs to be found. though there are still 2 UK dubbed episodes that haven't resurfaced yet either. Sometimes these smaller searches are fun to follow, and it's nice to see that even after all these years, there are still people out there with copies of these shorts on VHS tapes. I'm sure there are even more people out there that have these recordings and don't know they're lost. And then the final short showed up. Last year in another video, we discussed a series of shorts that aired on Nick Jr. as part of the My World series, called Downward Doghouse. These are basically the precursor animations to the series Ni Hao Kai Lan, and aired in between commercial breaks along with some other shorts. Strangely, for as recognizable as Ni Hao Kai Lan became, it seemed like this was the only series of the My World shorts that hadn't been re-uploaded to YouTube. I've never found a complete list of all the different shorts that were aired on My World, but from a quick YouTube search at the time, it seemed like Downward Doghouse were the only ones missing. There was one short available called Dragon Dance, but the other 2, Follow That Slipper and Where's Ho Ho, were not available online. And there was no set date or month we could even begin searching for recordings of, since these were aired randomly throughout the broadcast. So it was going to come down to finding them on tapes by accident, more or less. Last year, the second of the 3 shorts called Follow That Slipper was found on a VHS tape from 2005, and uploaded to YouTube in full. And as of June 2024, the final of the 3 shorts, Where's Ho Ho, was uploaded to YouTube by GamerGuy624 after being found on a VHS tape by CDCB. Curiously, it was shown during the commercial breaks for Dora's Fairy Tale Adventure, so I wonder if that had anything to do with the choice of airing it at that time. It seems weird that the last 2 were lost at all, or that copies were hard to find. But it's very nice to see all 3 collected here, and if they're not already backed up, make sure you grab yourself a copy while you can. This is the kind of topic that you could revisit in another few months, and find that one of the videos was taken down or deleted. As for other Downward Doghouse lost media, there actually is still some more missing content from the series, as all 3 shorts did get separate dubs in the UK. Dragon Dance has been found for that one, along with a muted Follow That Slipper, but the audio for that one is still missing, and none of Where's Ho Ho has resurfaced from the UK either. The first stop on our globe-trotting lost media trip takes us to Canada, and I gotta say, unless you're completely familiar with a piece of Canadian lost media, you might not even know it actually came from there. Topics like the Super Y pilot and the Jimmy Two Shoes pilot are indeed Canadian, but they're often grouped into categories with Nickelodeon or Disney animated series. This topic, however, isn't well known outside of Canada at all, for the fact that it's extremely obscure. This is My Special Book, a live-action television series made for kids that aired on YTV Junior and Treehouse TV, which are similar to Nick Jr. and Nickelodeon here in the US. The show takes place inside of a storybook, which is opened at the beginning of every episode, and reveals the main character, named Book Girl, who goes on adventures with her friends that all live inside of the book itself, which is closed to end each episode. Surprisingly, the series had a pretty good run from 2000 to 2007, before its cancellation as a result of programming changes to Treehouse TV, which sent the show into obscurity and would begin the search for its content nearly a decade later. The first place I ever saw My Special Book mentioned was a very popular thread on the Lost Media Wiki forums from 2017, which discussed the show's existence. Most people had vague memories of the show, describing it as trippy and bizarre, but with the exception of a single image that was found online, there was no other evidence that the show even existed. Several users did a lot of digging back then, and were able to unearth a wide variety of listings for the show, information that the show had actually begun production in 1998, and premiered in May 2000. It was also discovered from a Treehouse TV schedule archive that My Special Book aired every morning at 10 AM. But even with all of this groundbreaking information having been discovered for the search, content from the show itself remained to be seen, and only that single image had remained as the only visual evidence of its existence online. But there was a chance that more was to be unearthed. With some more digging in the thread, the resumes of the producer and musical composer of the show were discovered, and contact was made asking for more information about its creation and whether or not either person still had anything from it. Unfortunately, they didn't, and the search would hit another dead end, but not before confirming that the series ran for a total of 90 episodes before being taken off the air, which was reconfirmed by a list that was recovered. This is a huge amount of content to have gone missing, so several different ideas were suggested on where to look for more of it, including contacting more of the staff, and even the classic, try to find home recordings of the show from VHS tapes. However, these search efforts didn't really lead anywhere at the time, and for the next year or two, the search continued similar to other long-term searches in the community. Small progress was made, but nothing that directly led to finding the episodes, though it seemed like it would only be a matter of time before content resurfaced, considering how much of it was made for the show, and that ended up being the case. I had been following the thread on and off for a while at this point, and to my surprise, in 2019, the first clip resurfaced in a YouTube upload, and then a year later, Canadian Childhood, who spent a lot of time researching the topic, unearthed the entire first season of the series, to everyone's surprise. He was even able to confirm that my special book aired in 2007, contrary to the belief that it was off the air by 2006. The description of the video says the episodes are master tape quality, so they must have come from somewhere official, but I couldn't find an exact source for where they came from. However, the show is only partially found, as the second season is still missing. But this is far more content than anyone who was part of the search was ever expecting would resurface, so it's a big win. While my special book is one of the more popular pieces of lost media from Treehouse TV, there's so much more content that's been lost from them, and even other work from the producer who worked on the show. It's still surprising to me that a show with a 7-year run had no visual evidence for as long as it did, even from the network where it aired. But the dedication to getting it found in this thread is really a high point for the community. Here's another long search that got a huge update recently, and one that I've covered in an older video before. Originally, I was going to save this for another Lost Media Kids Show video, but since it's been so long since I've talked about it, I think discussing it here with Found Media is more fitting. Besides the Little Einsteins pilot, this topic is definitely one of the bigger Playhouse Disney searches that people have taken an interest in, which is great, considering I don't cover Disney Channel Lost Media on the channel often. This is mostly because I didn't really grow up watching it and have less of an attachment to the content that aired on it, but there are still a few nostalgic topics that come to mind. One of them was the short little bumpers and promos from Playhouse Disney that featured the colorful monkeys named Ooh and Ah. They hosted the block from 2007 to 2011, before being replaced by the Disney Junior revamp. But during their 4-year run on TV, they had a lot of memorable content, so it makes sense why people would want to find it. Specifically, I remember the Monkey Mail bumpers being particularly catchy, and there was actually a separate search that attempted to locate these alone. But you might be asking yourself, where do you start searching for this, with 4 years of content that aired daily, and with a variety of each kind of bumper? Let me direct you to the massive Google Doc that archives every found bumper for Ooh and Ah, which includes sections for date it aired, date it was found, and how complete it is. RetroVault, who is one of the leads on this project, reported that a total of 60 new bumpers were found this year, which is great progress, and there's a total of 265 on the list right now. There are even separate sections for international versions, which kinda crosses over into lost dub territory. The content from these other countries seems to be very rare, which makes it even more fun to try and find. But just like the Boomerang bumper search, which so far has several hundred entries in it, there's no master list for every Ooh and Ah bumper that was made, so it's not clear what would define a complete search. But I think that comes with the territory of lost bumpers and promos anyway. You never really expect to find all of them, and only find as many as you can. In that sense, searches like this can be very successful, and just looking at the spreadsheet is proof of that. This will be another fun topic to follow, and see how many more the team can find, or if some really rare ones are discovered. Finally, we've reached the last topic of the video, which might be the best one, as I can't think of anything more spooky and fitting for Halloween than a brand we know so well, being adapted in such an off-brand way, and was apparently so successful that the same concept was used for other brands definitely means it's going to need some explanation. A while ago at this point, I was doing a live stream with my viewers and asked for lost media topics that we could look up online and read through together, when someone mentioned a Thomas-related topic that I had never heard about before. I'm not a huge Thomas guy to begin with, but I've heard about a few of the more popular ones in passing. However, this isn't one of those, and seems to be pretty obscure, even to the community. You'll come across an article from the Thomas Wiki, as well as the Lost Media Wiki, that describes a short film produced by Studio Hansa, a British advertising company, back in the early 2010s. The title of this piece is called Thomas & Friends Institute of Innovation, and was commissioned by Hit Entertainment themselves as a pitch to promote the Thomas brand to merchandising partners around the world. Basically, they're trying to sell the license to companies that would be interested in producing products, and used this video as a way to entice those buyers. However, if you actually watch the video, there's a good chance you might be horrified by the content within it. The concept of the pitch involves two scientists working at the Institute of Innovation in attempts to make the Thomas brand more appealing to modern-day audiences, and try all kinds of experiments on the characters to bring them up to date. This includes giving Thomas dangly limbs that shoot out of his sides, injecting Percy with Botox, and giving Sir Topham Hatt steroids to get him in shape and remove his fat gut. When I first saw these screenshots, I really didn't believe this was real, and I thought it was either some kind of fan parody or a hoax that the community had taken as legitimate. But I'm the one who was wrong here. Hit Entertainment commissioned this and approved of it, making it completely legitimate. And as previously stated, this was so successful, the same concept was used in other brand advertisements. Within the various interviews and write-ups about this piece, it's been stated that it was made to be tongue-in-cheek and sarcastic in a way, but I guess that gets totally lost on me. I feel like this is so off-brand, it doesn't give me any idea about what the Thomas brand is about. Though the ad does end with a bit about how future generations will continue to enjoy Thomas in a post-apocalyptic world. So I suppose that does illustrate its longevity as a brand. Despite how bizarre and strange this is, it's definitely something that deserves to be seen. And unfortunately, that's where we get into the lost media of the topic. Ever since the short was created, and in the years following, a variety of content from it has resurfaced, including two 30-second clips that Studio Hansa posted to their website. Art director Gary Roberts confirmed in a 2014 interview that, sadly, due to the confidentiality of the project, everything and what's on the site is as much as we can share about the project, by all means. A series of screenshots have also become available and give us those great shots of the strange humor in trying to modernize the brand. But technically, the short isn't as lost as you might believe. This isn't a case of the studio having misplaced their copy, or it was once leaked to the public and now it's missing again. It's actually available for viewing at any time, but only if you're a company interested in the Thomas brand. Despite all the content that's already been put online, Studio Hansa won't show it to anyone not within the industry, which means unless it leaks, we'll likely never see the whole thing. Though this was 8 years ago that the project was created, so I would be interested in hearing from them on what the status of the short is. Maybe they just haven't updated their site, and no one outside of the industry has asked them since then. Still, it's a perfect fit for Halloween and a great piece of lost media that really embodies the rarity and strangeness that missing content can have for the community. Every now and then you come across a piece of lost media that was lost, had been found, and then goes missing again for the fact that nobody saved it during the time it was up. To my surprise, this almost happened with the MTV Kappa Mikey pilot, when the original upload that had been available for years and years randomly got taken down, but thankfully, someone had already re-uploaded it to archive.org, so it remained viewable. I actually did a whole video about this concept a while ago, but the topic for this segment has become a very popular request recently, and has had quite a long history of plots and tests from its earlier days. This is Yo Gabba Gabba, the popular Nick Jr. show that has all those colorful creatures singing and dancing with DJ Lance Rock. While I haven't really seen a lot of the show itself, I know that the market on Yo Gabba Gabba collectibles is quite expensive, and that the series basically had 3 different pilots created for it. The first one was made sometime in the early 2000s, and is more of a test than a pilot, simply titled Yo Gabba, and contains some of the most horrifying visuals I've ever come across for what was supposed to be a kids show. There are only 3 characters introduced here: a fat-looking Muno, a skinny-looking Broby, and an unnamed Grey robot who ended up becoming Plex. They all feature low-budget costumes, set designs, and visual effects, but the framework of the show can definitely be seen here. The second of the 3 pilots is titled Show Number 1, but is also referred to by name as Short Story, and was originally uploaded to Vimeo in December 2020 by user RayStarKitty, who had connections to the creator and got it from one of their DVDs. The Lost Media Wiki article says that these DVDs were used to promote the show before Nickelodeon picked it up, and links a photo of it. So this very much looks like a sampler and is probably very rare. The characters look slightly different from their final version, but for the most part, the visuals and structure are identical to the Nickelodeon production. This has also been re-uploaded elsewhere online in full, so it seems unlikely to ever go missing from the internet again. However, the third and final pilot, titled Play, had apparently been online at one point in February 2021, but was taken down shortly after and hasn't been seen since. In fact, the existence surrounding this pilot is somewhat a mystery, with there not being a lot of information online discussing it. The only pieces that prove it even exists at all are 2 individual shorts from the pilot, Bubblebeard and Lala Doodles, that were uploaded in 2006 and 2007 respectively. It's not stated by who or where the Play pilot was originally uploaded, but apparently a demo song that was used in it did make its way to Vimeo later on in 2021. With the exception of these 2 segments, it doesn't seem like there are any visuals from this pilot online anymore, though it's likely to be very similar to Short Story, with the characters probably looking the same in appearance, for the fact that it would have been the final independent production before Nickelodeon came in. And with how similar the pilots look in comparison to the final show, you'll have to be on the lookout for any uploads that might have gone under the radar. I tried looking around for any, but didn't find anything official, with the only result I came across being a fan-made recreation of it. At least we know that at one point, someone out there had a copy, and if one person did, then there's probably more who have it too. We just need to wait for it to resurface again. And then, someone found a copy. Let's begin the video by discussing a piece of lost media that was found pretty recently, and one that I had covered in a video not too long ago. The hope in covering it was that someone would come forward with a copy, and that kinda did happen. This is the second pilot to the Nick Jr. show Yo Gabba Gabba, which has had a really interesting backstory surrounding its pilots. The first of which was more of a test video made sometime in the early 2000s, by far the strangest of the 3, but was not lost media. The second one, titled Show Number 1, looks way closer to what the final show ended up becoming, but with a couple minor differences to the costumes, as it was handled independently from Nickelodeon. This one too, however, was not lost media, as it's been on Vimeo since December 2020. This one originated from a DVD that was passed around promoting the series before it was aired on TV. But finally, the third and final pilot we had our eyes on was titled Play, and this one was indeed lost media. However, it wasn't always lost, because in February 2021, reports stated that the full pilot had been uploaded online and could be viewed. But unfortunately, the pilot was taken down shortly after it was up, so it went from being available to becoming lost. What's even more unfortunate is that there was very little information about it online, so even getting details that could help us find a copy were difficult. The only real evidence we had to prove it existed, outside of the claims that it did, were 2 individual shorts that were in it, titled Bubblebeard and Lala Doodles, that were both uploaded in the mid-2000s and somehow are still up after all these years. Additionally, there was a demo song that claimed to be from the Play pilot that was uploaded to Vimeo later on in 2021, but no matter where else you looked, there was no trace of the whole piece. This was until October 2023, shortly after my video discussing the topic was uploaded, when more people started looking for a copy. It was user YoGabaguru who contacted a crew member that worked on the pilot and had a DVD copy of it that they shared online. It was pretty unbelievable to get a new copy just like that, and now the pilot can be viewed once again. It's also very interesting to know that this copy came from a DVD. It was never even mentioned that the play pilot was put onto a DVD, unlike show number 1, which we know had physical copies. When I tried looking for any stray or forgotten uploads of it, I was looking for a digital version, never even thinking I could have come across a DVD. This one must have been released as a promotional item in a similar way to show number 1, and is probably equally as rare. Personally, I'd still like to know where the original 2021 upload of it came from, whether that was from a DVD too, another crew member, or a completely unrelated source, but no matter how you look at it, we ended up getting a new copy, and now, all 3 YoGabagaba pilots have been found. Finally, we've made it to the last piece of found media in the video, and if there was ever one to finish off this year for the lost media community, I think this one would be it. While the Shrek I Feel Good test animation is definitely high up there and could be argued for the biggest find of 2023, I think I'd personally have to give it to this topic for how memorable the find was. If you've been following lost media for the past several years, chances are you've come across the pilot for the Nick Jr. show Blue's Clues at one point or another. This early version of the show was titled Blueprints, and was made before the series even got picked up by Nickelodeon in the summer of 1995. For nearly a decade following its creation, the pilot in its entirety had remained a mystery, with no content from it having been made available, or released to the public at all. It wouldn't be until 2006 when we'd get our first glimpse of it on TV, in a 10th anniversary special commemorating the Blue's Clues series. We got to see our first look at Blueprints and how it differed from the final show. Despite this first look at the pilot, it was only shown in very short clips, and that's all we'd get for the next decade. Throughout this time, the topic found new popularity in the earlier days of the lost media community, and it was also in one of the first batches of lost media topics I decided to cover on my channel as well. Word about this topic spread, and over the years, fans had been trying to get more from it, most notably from series creator Angela Santamero and from Nickelodeon themselves. We know that the pilot was put onto VHS and screened at preschools before the series was picked up, but finding one of those tapes could be impossible. Not to mention, Angela herself has stated she has a copy, along with several other mementos from the set, but cannot release them due to copyright reasons. Nick has teased us too over the years, constantly referencing the pilot by name, and most recently, posting new clips from it for the series' 25th anniversary. Fans believed that this was the precursor to a full release, as it proves Nick has their own copy, but no release ever happened. But now, that's something the internet doesn't have to wait for anymore, as 2 years following the new clips posted by Nick, the unexpected happened.
What? Koopa Dub said Blueprints got found 2 minutes ago? No way. Live on stream? Are we gonna go find look at Blueprints? No way. Where do I go to find it? YouTube? No, there it is! I'm gonna have to save it too after the stream. Oh my god, there it is. There it is. That's insane! I didn't think we were actually gonna get this. Oh my god!
Yes, out of nowhere, a copy of Blueprints resurfaced online, and nobody could believe it for how unexpectedly it arrived. News of it appearing spread all over the community and beyond. If there was anything limiting Shrek from becoming the biggest find of the year, it would probably be this initial reaction. With Blueprints, people were making re-uploads, backed it up dozens of times on the Wayback Machine, and discussed it so heavily it's unlikely to ever be lost again. The pilot itself is actually the precursor to the first episode of the series, Snack Time, and reuses the same plot. Though, unfortunately, this version seems to be missing some of its audio, including character voices and background tracks. While that doesn't hinder the overall watching experience, it would still be nice to get that version with all the final edits. Though despite this, the community has considered it found. We know that Nickelodeon has their own copy of it, and could release it anytime they wanted, so that would be a bonus on top of what we already have. We went from short clips that were passed around for years to the entire filmed episode that nobody was expecting. And now the final topic of this video is another one that nobody saw coming, that I haven't even talked about in much depth before, deepening the mystery surrounding an already mysterious and tiring search. This one is related to the Backyardigans series, which needs no introduction on this channel, or if you've been following Kids Show Lost Media. For many, many years, there have been searches conducted and still going for two of the series' biggest pieces of lost media. Those being the original live-action Me and My Friends pilot, which predated the final series by many years, and the actual pilot to the final series, done in CGI a while later. These are the two big Backyardigans topics, though recently, there has been some debate over how many different iterations of the CGI pilot exist, as some screenshots look a little earlier than others, suggesting there are two different versions. But while doing research into these topics, the Me and My Friends team came across another piece of seemingly lost Backyardigans content that nobody, not even the person that posted it, is aware of where it came from. Back in 2023, Burr and Alex were looking through reels on Vimeo in the hopes of coming across new clips from Me and My Friends that had maybe been posted there by someone who worked on it. Sorta like the Nick Studios Florida 10th anniversary video, which is where the only clip of it comes from. And while they didn't find anything related to Me and My Friends, there instead was a completely different piece of Backyardigans media that was there and became widely known about for the first time. By complete accident, this short clip of Pablo walking through an environment is sourced from a demo reel posted by Celluloid Studios, a company who worked in television and commercial animation, having created content for dozens of well-known companies. This clip is the only Backyardigans clip that appears in the demo, and doesn't look like anything else we've ever seen from the series. Needless to say, the uploader of this reel was contacted and was asked what exactly it's supposed to be, but turns out he didn't know for sure, stating, Celluloid Studios was an animation company that represented many different animation talents. Celluloid ceased operations in 2005. I imagine the clip you mentioned was from an animator who worked there at some time and submitted the clip to executive producers. I was one of several directors at the studio, but rarely had contact with other directors or animators that worked under them. I was never involved with anyone working on Backyardigans. Ever since this response, we had done a little work in trying to find other animators that were at the company in the early 2000s, when the Backyardigans was being worked on at Nick, but we never found anyone who could identify the clip. This has left us to guess on what this animation's intended use for, or what it could have been a part of, leading to two theories. The first theory, and the one that seems more plausible, is that it was a test animation done even earlier than the first tests for the Backyardigans CGI pilot that we know today. If you compare Pablo's appearance in this animation to some of his early concept art for the series, they seem to match exactly, bringing us to the conclusion that they are directly connected. It's also known now that Nick created the pilot in-house with motion capture, so it's possible they had tried giving it to other companies before doing that themselves. Now, the second theory that seems less likely is that this is somehow related to Me and My Friends itself, and could have been used in the actual pilot. If you look closely at the background, it appears as if Pablo is located within a park, which is where the setting of Me and My Friends takes place, meaning its short length could have been used as a bumper or scene transition within the pilot itself. We've never seen any portion of Me and My Friends besides that one short clip from the Nick Studios Florida reel, so there could be more original content like this in the pilot that we're not aware of, and this is our first look. But to me, it does seem more likely that it acted as a connection between the concept art of the main series and the CGI pilot, though more questions do need to be answered for sure, like if there are animations of the other characters similar to this. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to check out some of my other Lost Media videos. Thanks for watching, and until next time, Finn.